10 points in 10 minutes. First 2 points is just to remind us of 2 very important reports that came out last year that flew beneath the radar more than they should have done, looking at housing questions in this region. The first one was by Angus Reid, who did what I would regard as a scientific survey of the region, and found that for people in the Lower Mainland, housing is the most important issue, more important than the economy, than the environment, than crime, than transportation. I think it's important to always be reminding our elected leaders of that fact, because they seem to forget from time to time. The other point in that survey, there are a lot of them actually, but one that I want to bring to your attention is the generational side of this, that housing matters much, much more to people who are under 35 than it does to those who are older. I'm not saying, of course, there are not housing issues for older people, but it is the younger generation that is being differentially impacted. And this Angus Reid study has got data that enables you to say that. And what I'm interested in really is evidence-driven research, because so much in this field is ideologically driven, particularly from positions to the right of your position, which covers quite a bit of territory. The second report is one that was done by Van City, which talked about the labour market impacts of the housing market here. And again, very important issues. They looked at over 80 in-demand occupations and figured out that in about 5 years, it's going to be very difficult for people, new entries to those occupations, to be able to purchase in the Vancouver area. So these labour market impacts, I think, really ought to be having a lot more political traction than they seem to be. Well, we all know that this housing market cannot be driven by this labour market. Vancouver is a city that actually has quite modest wages. I've got lots of data on this, but let me throw just one out from Mr. Harper's census, the 2011 census, which showed that if you look at people with university degrees in the 10 largest cities in Canada, in terms of wages, Vancouver is number 10. It's the lowest of the 10 biggest cities. So there is no way that this modest labour market can drive these extraordinary housing prices. And so what we know, of course, is that it is investors from outside this region that are doing that. But before I get to that point, just want to highlight the affordability issues, which are well known to all of us. Again, there is good data. We don't have to be accused of just talking anecdotally, which is how the political right often tends to push these issues under the carpet, say it's just anecdote. There is a survey that's done every year by what is actually quite a right-wing consultancy in the United States. But what they show year after year is how incredibly unaffordable housing is. And of the 360 cities they look at, Vancouver is usually right behind Hong Kong as the least affordable. So I just wanted to make, none of this is anecdote. All of this is evidence-driven. So why are we in this conundrum? Well, gateway cities are cities that are open to global flows of capital and labor, i.e. immigration. They are typically port cities, and land is frequently in short supply in such cities. So there is a supply issue. If you look at a city like Sydney or Singapore or Hong Kong or San Francisco or New York, all gateway cities, all port cities, and cities where land is in short supply. But there's more than supply involved here. There is demand. And it's the demand issue that I think is particularly troublesome. Population growth is occurring in all of these gateway cities, and it is being driven by immigration. And what makes this a particular issue that has affected our housing market is that we have, unlike any other city, I shouldn't say any other city in the world because that is not evidence driven. We have a very, very high proportion of wealthy migrants who come here. I estimate about 200,000 people have come to Vancouver in the last 30 years through the business immigration program. So these are wealthy folk, and not only do they buy property for themselves, but they invest in property as well. And I think this federal program of business immigration is one of the important factors that has led then to networks back to the countries that these folk come from of investors as well as migrants affecting the market here. We know there is a huge amount of wealth in East Asia, and surveys of people in East Asia, well specifically China, who have got liquid assets of over $1.5 million US. Guess how many households there are in China with over $1.5 million? There's 1 million of them. And half of them want to leave. Half of them want to leave China to take out their capital and indeed take out their families. Vancouver is one of the destinations that has been popular for them, and inevitably there have been impacts on the market which start at the top end. This is where foreign capital typically comes into gateway cities, is at the top end of the market, but then the effects ripple out through the market from those high-end neighborhoods. These effects in the last 2 years have been multiplied by currency exchange issues. The fact that the Canadian dollar has gone down by more than 20% against the Chinese yuan and by 30% against the American dollar. I have a son who lives in San Francisco, and when he came home at Christmas, he said to me, "Everything is on sale here." By which he meant it's 30% cheaper. Well, that includes our property market as well. It is a really good deal if you come from a high price currency to be buying here. And this, I think, is the primary reason that prices have gone up by 20% or more in the last year. This is the currency exchange issue working itself out. All right, my last 3 points. What to do about it? What can we do about it? This problem is so deep that there is not a single silver bullet. We wouldn't expect that to be the case. We really need all 3 levels of government to be on side, which is a very big ask, I know. Clearly the federal government has got to get back in a serious way into the provision of social housing, which it has really not done now for over 20 years since the Paul Martin budget in the early 90s, when basically all new funding for social housing ended. This is one essential step. The actions of the provincial government I'm finding very disappointing. Perhaps you disagree with me, perhaps not. But the last budget was a travesty. They simply stomped on the face of all young folk in particular who are trying to get into the housing market. in this region. The property transfer tax, I thought, was an area which would not be that controversial. In other gateway cities I've been looking at, Sydney, Singapore, Hong Kong, and London, they all have property transfer taxes which are graduated, where the top figure is as high as 12%. And so effectively they are wealth taxes. They are trying to cool off the market at the top end. That is the objective. And in London, Singapore, and Hong Kong at the top end, that has been a successful strategy. The idea, of course, is if you can cool off the market at the top end, so to that cooling influence. I'm not talking about major drops in the market, but just to try to slow the level of increase. Well, in the comments that were made following the budget, Mr. Young and indeed the Premier made it quite clear that they actually want a high-priced housing market. The statement that we do not want to interfere with people's equity, that is to say we want prices to stay high. The statement that we welcome investment means that we are quite happy if they go higher. And I found that a very disappointing position. Final thing, municipal government. What can municipal government do? And I'm obviously cherry picking here. There's a whole suite of things that we could be talking about. Two items I just identify here is the need to protect existing cheap rental housing. It's very disturbing to see how both private and subsidized rental properties are so much at risk in this period. And while the city government is talking about building 1,000 units a year, which is a good thing, I don't know if you've checked the prices of those units. I was told that the studio for one of those projects on Kingsway is $1,050. I mean, this is really very, very expensive rental housing. I'm sure it's good quality, but we have much cheaper and livable rental housing that we need to be doing a better job of preserving. And my last point, this is 10B as opposed to 10A, is I think many neighborhoods are getting very angry, and there's a lot of uncertainty being created by this spot rezoning that is occurring in so many places.